Today I want to talk about something that a lot of people really want to talk about. And it's a kind of, people may say it's a taboo conversation, but I don't look at it this way. You see, when I read the Bible, I look at it completely different from a lot of other people. And I don't know why God made me this way, but this is it. So I want to go on to this verse, and I'm going to explain it to you how I see it, okay? So bear with me and watch the whole thing before you make your judgment on me. So here we go. So we're going to look at John, 1 John chapter 4, and let's start with verse 1, okay? And this is King James Version. You can look at it at other different versions, but my foundation and my basis is King James. Okay, so let's look at verse 1. Beloved, believe in not every spirit. That's true. But try the spirits whether they are of God, because many false prophets are gone out into the world. Okay, now that's true. The Bible time and time again talks about that there will be false prophets sent out into the world to deceive men. We know that. We know that. In fact, some people believe that so much that when a true prophet comes, they dismiss it. You got to be careful in that too. Okay, so here's how you test it. Okay. Hereby know ye the Spirit of God. Every spirit that confess that Jesus Christ came in the flesh is of God. And every spirit that confesseth not that Jesus came in the flesh is not of God. Okay. So this is black and white. Black and white. So it's saying basically we are to test the spirits, whether this person is controlled by evil spirits or is by influenced by the Spirit of God. Okay, black and white. They must confess that Jesus came in the flesh. And if Jesus didn't come in the flesh, stay away. Now, many Christians, when they come into this walk of Christianity, okay, it is an awesome beginning of a relationship with God. Okay. Now, when we go and praise and worship God and we go and praise and worship Jesus, that's good. That's fine. That's what we're supposed to do because we love what was given to us and we don't deserve it. But yet he gave it to us freely and we're grateful. Okay. But a lot of Christians or a lot of people get to the point where they worship Jesus so much that they elevate him beyond the point where he never came as a human. Does that make sense? Because we forget that he came into the flesh. Now, people say, well, why did he come in the flesh? Okay, that's super simple. The reason why God came down on earth and became flesh for us is because in order for us to be redeemed back out of this sinful world, it had to be a sacrifice that was leveled to us. So he had to become human to sacrifice as a human to be the sacrifice for us. So God didn't come down on a cross and died on a cross with not being human. He had to come in the flesh in order to be a sacrifice for us that are in the flesh. Does that make sense? Because a lot of people, they steer away that Jesus came in the flesh. They steer away that he was way more than human, and he was way more than came in the flesh. You know, there's no way that Jesus had the same desires or the same things that humans have. That's not true. Jesus did come on earth, and Jesus did come in the flesh, and he had fleshly desires. Because now he didn't sin, but yes, he still had fleshly desires, because that's what the human culture is. That's what this flesh was. Is it desires things. It goes through things and all that stuff. And Jesus experienced that, and he still did what he had to do. So he made an example of us how to live. And a lot of people say, "Oh, we can never be Jesus." Well, no. There you go. You're elevating Jesus above human existence. You're elevating Jesus above him being flesh. You see what I'm saying? You have to say, hey, no, Jesus came in the flesh to show us how to live. That's the only way we can comprehend that we can live like Jesus and did what Jesus did and beyond. We have to get over the stumbling block that Jesus did come on this earth as a human, and he did experience some things that we go through. Okay, you have to get that mindset, because if you don't, you'll never reach that peak of the next level. Does that make sense? So you ask me, say, Chris, how can I get to the point where I can see myself as Jesus? Because Jesus did come in the flesh, but it's hard for me to concept that he was a human too, and I can relate to him and try to live how Jesus lived. But I'm surrounded by people that don't see him as a flesh. They just see him as a God, and I can't relate to that. And that goes against everything that Jesus was talking about. Jesus said, I came in the flesh where you can relate to me, so you can do the things that I do and beyond. Okay, for me, and I know this is going to sound crazy, but for me, how I see Jesus as me and the things, what grounds me as Jesus was in the flesh, and he was a dude, and he experienced the things he did. He farted. He used the restroom. He pooped. You know, I'm sure if many people have had fasted, you know, there's fasts where you get constipation, or when you sometimes when you fast and you get diarrhea or anything like that. I'm sure Jesus experienced diarrhea. I'm sure Jesus experienced constipation. I am sure Jesus, say, hey, disciples, I'll be right back. I'm going behind that rock, and I'm going to take a piss, you know. I'm pretty sure Jesus used the restroom. Does this relate to the Bible? Oh my gosh, nothing outside the scripture is true. Everything in scripture, it's, if it ain't in the scripture, it's not true. Okay, so let's go to this verse, because it's going to blow your mind that Jesus talks about poop. It's crazy. Okay, check this out. So let's go to Mark chapter 7, and let's back it up to 14, okay, because you want to read the Bible in context. Okay, so let's go to 14. And Jesus called the crowd to him and saying, listen to me, everyone, and understand this. Nothing outside of a person defile them by going into them. Rather, it is what comes out of a person that defiles him. Okay, he's talking to the scribes and Pharisees. Basically, they're saying, "Oh, you can't eat pork," or "Hey, you can't eat this," and "Hey, you can't eat shellfish." "Hey, you can't eat shrimp." Blah 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 blah. And Jesus is like, dude, it's not about what you eat. It's about what comes out of your heart. Carry on. 17. After he left the crowd and entered the house, his disciples asked him about this parable, because they were confused. Of course they were. They were like, okay, we're following this dude, and he's like totally going against everything that we were raised up to believe. And some people that watch this, they're still on the fence line about, you know, pork or anything like that. Let's see what Jesus has to say. Now, you're like, oh my gosh, what does this have to do with poop? Check this out. So the disciples came into the house with him and they're asking him about this parable. And he says, Jesus is so cool. He's like, are you so dull? Are you so dull? You have no imagination to think? Just basically, are you so dull? He asked. Did you see that nothing that enters the man from outside can defile them? It's a question mark. For it doesn't, or no. Don't you see that nothing that enters the man from outside can defile them? For it doesn't go into the heart, but it goes into the stomach. And then it comes out of the body. Poop! She's talking about poop. Obviously, he knows about poop because he pooped. Okay? But then again, check this out. Basically, right here, he's stating that it doesn't matter if you eat pork or different things. Okay, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what goes in the stomach; it's going to come out. Okay, Jesus is saying it's not about that. But Jesus goes on a step further and says, "What comes out of the person, that's what defiles them. For it comes from within the heart." He's talking about what you speak. And he says that evil thoughts and sexual immorality, thief, murder, adultery, greed, malice, the whole 9 yards. Okay? It's what comes out of the mouth that defiles the person. It's not what you eat defiles the person. And it's not your poop that defiles the person either. So this is pretty cool. I look at it this way. It makes me bring Jesus down that he came as a human. And a lot of people don't want to see Jesus use the restroom or see Jesus in that way. But for me to know he came in the flesh, I imagine that Jesus had to bowel movements. I know that's crazy, but that keeps me foundation that I can relate to Jesus and try to do the things that Jesus did by going down to the basics level that, hey, he used the restroom. So a lot of people are going to say, oh my God, you blasphemy, Jesus. Oh my God. No, I'm bringing them down to where I can see him that he came in the flesh. Now, if you want to keep Jesus up there, you're kind of falling in that category that he didn't come in the flesh. Just saying. So why don't you find, I make a challenge to you. Why don't you find things that you can know that he came in the flesh so you can relate to him, that you can follow his ways. That's a challenge to you. Love you. I hope this didn't offend anybody, but hey, this is my interpretation. This is how it keeps me grounded. I know Jesus came in the flesh. So, love you. Peace out.